Welcome to the S.O.A.P video series from Oak Tree Community Church in South Bend, Indiana. In this series, we take a look at a Bible reading plan and where we're going through the Bible and just give some thoughts and some insights along the way. We're in the book of Chronicles. Right. In fact, actually,
last week.
We're at the end of the book of Chronicles.
Yeah, week 5.
This is week 5. Next week we'll move into Chronicles and just keep it going. Why stop when when you're having fun, right?
I actually love it.
This has been pretty. This has been pretty good.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We are cherry picking a little bit, which is fine because there are a whole bunch of lists of names, and while they are in the Bible, they are important. We're doing more of the story of David and moving into Solomon.
Go through the narrative. Yeah. It's not that it's not important how many talents of silver and gold, but
there's some amazing things in there.
So for this week, we're doing chapters basically 22 and some of 23, and then we skip to 28 and 29.
Right,
and that finishes up the book. So
right.
What's going on here?
Well, I got to back up,
okay?
Because the last 2 weeks were awesome, and they were awesome from the standpoint. And I have to look up why they're awesome again,
right?
Because they both kind of laid out the same way, where they started out not weak, but building up the story. And as the week went along, there's this big ending, and both times it took a left-hand turn. And at least for me, it ended up something completely different. So 2 weeks ago, it started out with David and a song. And I know you loved it, being the music guy. I maybe struggled a little bit to get through it, right? But then, as he keeps going through it, David's looking around, and he's in this palace, and the Ark of the Covenant, where God is living, is under a tent. And David's like, we need to do
We can do better than this.
Yep. And you're like, okay, great. And then all of a sudden, God reverses it. And it turns into the Davidic covenant. No. I'm going to build you a dynasty.
Yeah.
And it's like, how cool is that? Yeah, exactly. He flips it.
Yeah.
And then last week, it starts out strong. David is beating up all these enemies, right? And it's all the ites, right? The Hittite, Amorites, Hittites, and Palestinians. Philistines. There we go. And he's winning battle after battle. And it's not that he gets cocky, but it says that there's an adversary who incites him. And David ends up sinning.
Yeah. And
it's like, wow. And then, it's like, they're going to lose and all this, bad things are going to happen. And David ends up buying the land for the temple.
Yeah.
And it was really an amazing shift and a heart. And it was like, wow. So,
can we go 3 for 3?
Well, exactly. So now, I'm ratcheting it up.
Right, yeah. Expectations.
What's this week?
Raising the bar.
I was a little apprehensive. Am I going to be let down? I don't think I was let down, but again, it was different. And the sheer volume of things that we see in here. So now we have the Davidic covenant. We have the land for the temple. Now we need to get a temple built. And it's going to take a while. I mean, from our standpoint, a couple weeks. From their standpoint, a couple years, if not more than that. But we know that the temple is going to be built, and we know Solomon's going to build it. Mm-hmm. But here's one for you, right? So David bought the land. David made the plans. In chapter 22, David gets the resident foreigners to be ready to do the work. David provides, it said, 100,000 talents of gold and 1 million talents of silver. So it's funded. Mm-hmm. David organized the Levites to, once the temple is built, to manage it and work with it. Mm-hmm. And we think, 50. How many people could there be? There's 38,000 of them. So why isn't this David's temple? Why is this not David's temple?
Because I think it was, it's called Solomon's temple because he's the one who actually, built it. Today, in today's world, the person who funds it is the person who gets the name on it, right?
Yeah, right. You get the plaque.
But I honestly think that the reason it's not David's is because God said, no, you don't get to do it. He's going to do it.
Yeah. And the reason he gave was David was a warrior, right? And a lot of blood was spilled.
You got a lot of blood on your hands as a warrior. And it's funny because he didn't say that as a bad thing. He didn't say having a lot of blood on your hands as a warrior made you bad or sinful or I'm disowning you. He just said that I just don't want those hands building my house. That's all he said.
Yeah.
Solomon, quick technical thing, the word Solomon comes from the same root as shalom. In Hebrew, you would pronounce it shlomo. And shalom is peace or welfare. Right. And so Solomon is actually a man of peace, and he had a kingdom of peace.
So we're really moving from David, who became a warrior king, literally got Jerusalem, established it as the home base,
the hub,
and then kind of spread out from there, winning war after war, getting land. And so now it's in Solomon's hand. Like you said, it's a peaceful time.
I really like 1 Kings 4 because it sort of summarizes just sort of the extent and the reach of Solomon's kingdom, and just other than Solomon's personal issues, right? And this really was the golden age of Israel. In money and literature and everything. The worship of God went downhill, there's no doubt, but this was the highlight until Messiah sits on the throne, which is really cool with the Davidic covenant, because you got the best times with Solomon,
right,
and then Messiah in the future.
Kind of bookends there.
Yeah. There has never been anything like this before or since than what we're going to see here.
So in later readings, David also said, oh, by the way, I wanted to mention, I think in the second reading, on the card, it's a little odd, where we're reading verses 24 through 32, right, on there. It's not chapters 24 to 32, because the chapters kind of fit in there, because we're right around chapter 23 there, so...
that's
just letting people know.
That's a good point. So in chapter
somebody
23,
may have started reading too many chapters.
names will be changed to protect the innocent, right? Yeah. So in chapter 23, we're hitting the first 6 verses, and then we skip down to the end. Yeah.
Right. I thought it was awesome in chapter 28, which is later in the week. David is in front of, let's just say, important people of Israel, right? He's coming to the end of his reign. He brings everybody in, and he says, here's the plan. And he scopes out, I picture him with architectural drawings. I have no idea if they actually had it. Yeah. He's saying how much money he's putting in. He's saying what he wants to do. And then he says, and here's the guy who's going to do it, right? And he named Solomon so that everybody knew who he wanted his heir to be. And I think especially in, even now, transfer of power can sometimes be a little iffy. Back in those times, it can certainly be time of trouble. So to have a peaceful transition just helps the country. And I thought that was really interesting. And then chapter 29, the ending, maybe not the huge ending that we had before, but it was awesome that David did all these things. And of course, God was right there, right? But David was able to do these things. And then David opens it up and says, who wants to contribute?
Yeah.
And you can see all these people. Oh, we didn't know it was a fundraiser.
I got invited to a dinner and thought it was a dinner.
It's a multi-level platform. The key verse that I got out of it was the second part of the verse that said, contributed to the Lord with a willing attitude.
Yeah.
And I see David having the right heart and the right attitude. And it seems at this point the nation does too. And you're talking the highlight. I mean, how much better could it be?
Yeah.
If the nation and the king are all on the same page, all moving together.
Yeah.
And now we have plans going forward on what we want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yep.
Cool stuff. So what'd you find?
Well, I've got 4 thoughts that I saw, and a lot of it really just builds on what you were saying. Some less technical. Sometimes I get really technical, and because it's fun.
That'll be next week.
That's fun. Yeah, maybe next week. This week is really more application or practical. Some leadership stuff. I'm seeing the leadership style of David in here. Right, and you're a business guy. I mean, you've been in a lot of business and a lot of different
somebody
bosses.
that can cast a vision is, you may not even agree with it, but hey, we got orders.
Right,
this is our direction.
Right, and like you said, get the buy-in of the people and all of those different things. So, number one, the term legacy gets thrown around a lot. Right, legacy this and legacy that, and build your legacy and everything. David. You could go into this thinking that David is about building his legacy. It's David's name that's going to be, on here. Why isn't it David's temple and all that? But he said back in chapter 22, verse 5, he said, "My son Solomon is just an inexperienced young man, and the temple to be built for the Lord must be especially magnificent, so it will become famous and be considered splendid by all the nations." Right? And again, you could be thinking, David's really, making a name for himself here before he goes out. Yeah. But when he talked to Solomon, he said in verse 7, "My son, I really wanted to build a temple to honor the Lord my God." So when David's thinking legacy, he's not just thinking how long his name is going to be. David's really thinking about, what am I doing in this life so that long after I'm dead, God still keeps being exalted. Right? That's legacy thinking right there. I really like that.
We're still talking about that temple.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. And who built it, right? Secondly, I love the fact that David's like, "I'm going to build you a house," and God says, "Yeah, no, you're not." That would have been a really good time for David to get ticked off and stomp away and say, "You know what? If that's the way it's going to be, let me die," or whatever. Right? He did get dramatic every once in a while in his life.
Right. Wow, that's a great one.
But he didn't. He said, "Okay, well, if I'm not going to do it, I'm going to make sure whoever does is going to have the best of everything."
Yeah.
So I may not be able to do it, but I can help prepare for it. I can invest in it. He wasn't afraid to let somebody else take the credit for it.
Right.
He was just looking through my thoughts here, my notes. He was man enough to help somebody else succeed.
Yeah.
Because of a bigger goal, a bigger picture. Right. And then he invited the people to give too.
Right.
Right?
Right. It's this is mine. Open it up so everybody can have.
We're all doing this. We're all in this together. Let's do it for the glory of God.
Yeah, and I don't know about people that are watching this, but how many times in your lives have you said, "I'm going to do this for God"?
Yep.
And then we maybe, or don't. Your heart's not in the right spot, right?
Yeah.
I'm doing
it for God.
Yeah, for God.
God.
This is something I'm doing. Versus, and God says no. And David, not that he found a way around it, but took a different path.
Well, because God didn't say, "No, it can't be done."
Right.
God said, "No, you're not going to be the one to
the one.
spearhead it."
Yep.
So, well, fine. I'm not going to spearhead it, but I sure am going to be a part of it.
Yep.
And I think to be able to, when God doesn't always let us do everything we want to do.
Well,
sometimes
he's already got his own plans.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But, he does give us the desires of our heart and stuff like that. But sometimes he just says, "That's not your role." And our response to that, I think, is really crucial. And I love David's response to God saying, "That's not your role." And David said, "Fine, then I'm going to help out whoever's role it is."
Yeah.
And I really love that.
Which is really not odd, but from David, from a shepherd to a king to a winning, quote, all the wars, king of a nation that whatever they're doing, they're prospering.
Yeah.
You could easily get a big head.
Easily.
You could easily.
Well, and we saw that with him counting the army last week and everything, right?
Right. His home life wasn't the best.
Well, no,
like we said before, from Chronicles standpoint, which is more from God's view.
Yeah, sort of the priestly, prophetic side of things, right?
Yeah.
So building off of that, number 3, it takes a lot of people doing a lot of small jobs to complete a big project.
Yeah.
You were talking about the hundreds of thousands of people involved in this project. The fact of the matter is, Solomon didn't build this thing. Right? Not one of these people built the temple. They all did. Yeah. Right? And so, is it easy to get stuck in, our one little thing or our one job or whatever and miss the fact that we're part of a much bigger project that God is doing? Jesus said, I'm going to build my church. And if you're a part of that, that's an awesome project. It doesn't matter, how big or small.
Do your no matter how small it is, do it well.
Yeah. Yeah. We look back at some of the great spokesmen and preachers of the past, and I don't remember names exactly, but I remember different quotes of, if God calls you to be a street cleaner, be the best street cleaner you can be.
I think that was Martin Luther King.
It might have been Martin Luther King. And maybe it was Dwight Moody, somebody else said, if God calls you to be a preacher, don't stoop to be a king. Just different perspectives on when and if we really believe that God is the one who gives us our spiritual gifts to serve Him,
right? Then
that's, like David. No, you don't get to do this. Okay, but I can do this, right? Absolutely. Yeah. Great, go do this.
Right.
So I think that's pretty cool. And then number 4, you mentioned that he got the Levites all moved around. The reason he did that was originally those groups of Levites, their job was carrying the ark around, setting up the temple, setting up the tabernacle, tearing it down, the whole thing. Yeah. Well, with a temple, that's not needed anymore. So instead of just saying, okay, you're done, you're not needed anymore, David said, no, you're still very, very important, but your role has changed. And here's what we need you to do now.
So that's like the gatekeepers and
gatekeepers and the musicians and all of the different. You're gonna become taking care of the temple as opposed to taking up and down the tent and carrying it around. Right. Sometimes in life, our roles change. Sometimes God has us here, God has us doing this, our gifts, or whatever. And David's like, here's what I'm gonna do. No, you're really not. Okay, well, here's what I'm gonna do instead. That's fine. And David had the foresight, and David had the wisdom, and we talk about Solomon's wisdom, but the leadership that's going on in these chapters is really cool. And I think I don't want people to miss.
Right. Well, some of these important people were supervisors over 1,000.
Yeah.
So there was
and which again shows if one guy is a supervisor over 1,000, that means you need 1,000.
Yeah. Right.
Non-supervisors.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? So I love this section, not because of all the detail, but you take a step back and see the big picture and how things are moving around and all of the moving parts in it. And David is managing this and then handing it off. Just from a leadership standpoint, I really like some of the practical things in here.
Well, I kind of sneak peek till next week, too. and Not that it's the same story at all, but we see Solomon next week now taking over, making it his, and starting to implement part of these, which is way cool.
Good transit. I always think of there are plenty of bad transitions in this world. The good ones stand out, and it always makes me think of like the Olympic relays when you have a really good baton handoff. It's so smooth, it's so easy, and they don't miss a beat, and they just pick it up and keep going, and yet each one runs a little bit differently, but they're still running the same race, and they're doing it as a team.
Yeah, I might not be able to tell. I was in track for a while. I think everybody has been. And the handing off of the baton, takes a lot of work.
It does.
But it is impressive, and I think we've all watched the Olympics where the fastest runners have some of the lousiest handoffs.
Yep.
It's like, oh man, if they had that nice slick handoff, they'd be shaving 5 seconds off the time, from the 4 of them.
Yep. Yeah, it's not the fastest, it's not the strongest, it's not the whatever. I'm studying Zechariah right
teamwork
now,
element.
getting ready for, not by strength, or not by might, not by power, but by my spirit, says the Lord of hosts, is a key verse in chapter 4. And yeah, the fastest runner can be the one who drops the baton, because it's not a team effort. It's, so much good stuff in here.
Yeah, really.
Beyond just, hey, they're building a temple.
Right.
Some really cool stuff in here. So I'd love to hear what you see in here as you're reading through it, some of the principles that you find. And not that the technical stuff, not that the details don't matter, but, there's a lot of other stuff that goes into a project like that. And I'd love to hear what you see in there. So, subscribe and like and share and do all of those things that we do on social media today. And come back next week, and we will just continue the story right through into 2 Chronicles and see how this plays out. Okay? All right? See you then.